You're never fully dressed without a smile, and neither is your balloon. I'm Shana Sharp, and these are the video notes for the Drawing on Balloons class that I taught at Capital Kidvention in January of 2026. Big thank you to my friends at Jamar Balloons for sponsoring me as an instructor at that event. Grazie mille. Now, let's get into it. When you're drawing on a balloon, a lot of the supplies that you'll use will be supplies that you can get at any art supply or office supply store. Things work differently when drawing on latex than when drawing on paper. So we'll go through what supplies you need and how they act on a rubber surface. Sharpies. And I'm not just partial to them because they have a great name. Sharpie markers are, available everywhere in a huge variety of different colors. So I highly recommend grabbing a bunch of Sharpie. In my experience, they don't pop the balloon. Sometimes if the balloon pops, the pigment from the marker will get on your fingers, but it's not really ever been a big issue for me. So I do love Sharpies, but there's one Sharpie that I don't really like that much, and that's the black Sharpie, which is a bummer because black is a pretty important color when you are drawing on a balloon. So I have found a couple of alternatives. The one I've been using for, I guess, almost 10 years now is the Pentel Maxi Flow. All of this information will be in the video description. Make sure that you're getting the permanent marker. There is also a whiteboard version of Pentel Maxi Flow, just to be extra confusing. I believe these are only for sale like in Japan and Europe, so you may need to purchase on Amazon and make sure that, again, you're not getting the whiteboard version. Pentel Maxiflow. I just find it has a much more opaque, a darker, more vivid black pigment. If you don't feel like ordering something from Europe just to draw a black line, good news. There is a cheap and pretty high quality alternative out there. This is a Staples marker, Staples Duramark. You can get these online at Staples or in their stores. We don't always want to draw colors on a light colored balloon. Sometimes we want to draw a light color on a dark colored balloon. And the way that ink works is it lays a layer of pigment on top of your surface. Now, when your surface is a white piece of paper, very bright color shows up. But if you're drawing on a dark surface, sometimes that ink is not going to have enough contrast to show up. So you'll need a white paint marker to lay down an area of white acrylic paint that you can color your light colored ink on top of. Industry standard, as long as I've heard of it, is the Edding 750 paint marker. Edding 750, they're available on Amazon. Generally, I try and get a box of 10 of them because it's more affordable to just buy them in bulk. You can also go in on a box with a few other local artists if you just want to try this out. You're not ready to invest that much. But it's a nice, evenly applied acrylic white paint that does not reliquify when a Sharpie ink marker is drawn on top of it. And I bring that up because Sharpie does make a paint marker. This is the Sharpie Creative Brush Tip paint marker in yellow. Now, I was only recently introduced to this marker. I've known of Sharpie paint markers for a while, but my understanding was that the solvent in the ink marker of Sharpie would reliquify the paint marker, and it does. If you draw with a Sharpie marker on top of even dried Sharpie paint marker, the paint will reliquify and smear, and you won't get that nice coverage that you like. However, to save time, rather than draw a white shape, wait for that white to dry, then take out my yellow marker and then draw yellow on top of the white shape, you can draw just a yellow shape with a Sharpie paint marker if there is no other marker that will be drawn on top of it. So I would say the caveat of when you can use the Sharpie paint marker is when you're going for just the color by itself. These take a bit longer to dry. than the Eddings. So I'm not at the point where I'm just gonna switch to all Sharpie paint markers because Eddings is very versatile and I can always use this. I know how this acts. But for super quick, for example, Lightning McQueen drawing the headlights on the front, this is just gonna be a lot faster for me. I just know that because it takes extra time to dry, I need to draw that detail earlier. I'm gonna make a very fast Lightning McQueen just to show you what I mean about drawing on the headlights. This is not my original design. This is based on a design by Buster Balloon, the icon. It looks okay, but what really makes this design come to life are the details. I have done this many, many times, and people will say, oh, I kind of see it, and then you do the face, and then they're like, oh, that's amazing! So, just prepare yourself for that. Drawing the blue on the windshield of Lightning McQueen's eyes here, that will be very easy because we're drawing on a white balloon, so there won't be much problem. But drawing headlights on a red balloon are actually pretty tricky. With a yellow Sharpie marker to draw on a red balloon, you can kind of see it when the light's shining directly on it, but it's pretty difficult to see. When drawing on a darker balloon, you can first put your color shape in white, allow that to dry while you draw your other features, and then you come back to the now dry white patch to draw on your yellow shade. You don't want to put your yellow ink on top of wet paint, so I always tap a little bit with my finger on the paint to see if there's any lift. I do have a little bit of white there, so it wasn't quite dry, but now it is. That's looking good. Come over with my yellow marker, and it will only show up even if I color very sloppily, even if I color up and down over the white, the yellow is only visible where it's over that white shape. However, that's a two-step process, and one thing we can do with the Sharpie Creatives is on the other side here, just go and do one swipe to get that same shape. However, I can tell that it is going to take a little bit of time to dry. So while that's drying, I can do my other details, blue ovals in my windshield here. And I do like to always give Lightning McQueen a bit of a smile. He's a friendly guy. I could leave it here, but I always think that that black outline just really kind of adds that finishing cartoony detail. So again, I'll start on what I know is the driest. So these eyes, I can draw some black pupils in my eyes. And then we're just gonna trace my smile. I don't feel like I really need to trace the outline of the headlights. I think that the contrast is enough there. But that is an example of when we would use a paint marker to get a detail on a dark balloon. One other thing that I have come across that is helpful in drawing on balloons is the colorless blender. Now, this is a specific type of marker. This one is Copic, but there are many other more affordable brands. But it's basically a brush tip ink marker with no pigment, just the solvent. You can use a colorless blender and erase the marker that you've drawn on already. Those are the supplies you'll want to have on hand as you dive into embellishing balloons with artwork. Drawing on a balloon. There are a few techniques that are going to help you maintain stability because as you're new to this, your hands won't be as confident in their movements. So all of the support you can give your hands will be very helpful. Drawing on rubber is different than drawing on paper. And here's one of the ways. When you draw on rubber, The ink does not dry immediately, so you can use your finger to smear. That also is a way you can erase a mistake. Just draw directly over your line. Now you can kind of see a little artifact of where I had drawn before, right? It's not perfectly as though there had never been a mark on the balloon, but when we do our final markings on the balloon, that contrast will draw the attention much, much more. Also, balloons are squishy in a way that paper is not when you're drawing on a firm surface. And you can move the balloon much easier than you can move paper. At least you can move paper in a plane, you can rotate it, but a balloon, you have the option to move in three-dimensional space while you're drawing. This is helpful to you. When you are drawing on a balloon, start on your non-dominant side. I'm right-handed, so when I draw on a balloon, if I'm doing a face, for example, where there's an eye on this side and an eye on this side, if I draw this eye first, and now I go over to draw my left eye, well, I can't see the shape of the eye on the right here because my hand is covering that eye. So I always want to be sure, and this I can cheat because it's not attached to any body, that I start on the non-dominant side. Do this eye first. Now when I come over here to complete the other eye, I have a clear visual marker so I can see about the right size to try and make sure they're as symmetrical as possible. Is it perfect? No. Will it ever be perfect? No. You need to make your peace with that right now. It's okay. Close enough is good. Just make sure that you're moving smoothly and confidently. That'll make all the difference. I have a lot of people say that their hands tremble or shake when they're drawing on balloons and they're not able to get a nice straight line. Here's my trick for that. I mentioned I'm right-handed. I use my right pinky as a kickstand. I'll pick an area of the balloon that I'm not drawing on, that's not like structurally important, and plant my pinky on the balloon. Now I'm still holding the pen, the marker, the same way I would hold a pencil or any other writing utensil, but my pinky is extended, and that surface there means that now this hand is connected to the movement of the balloon. Does that make sense? If I freeze my pinky, now I know that anywhere that this balloon moves, this marker hand is going with it. So it's not like they're two objects in space that I'm trying to line up together. It is one object, they are connected, and I am moving these fingers. See, if I don't place the pinky and I try and draw a straight line, well, okay. It's pretty straight. But I can tell it was getting a little wobbly, especially as the balloon was starting to curve. But if I have my pinky planted, that's a much straighter, much more confident line. I feel more empowered to put pressure on the balloon. I know that putting pressure on the balloon isn't going to move the balloon out of the way because, again, I'm holding it together as one unit. So practice that, drawing straight lines and curved lines while keeping your pinky in one position. Just holding it into the balloon, sink it into the balloon a bit. The balloon is not going to pop. This, even though this pen tip looks a bit sharp, it's not nearly sharp enough to do damage to the balloon, as long as your balloon isn't like dangerously overinflated. So practice that at home. Try and do shapes and lines and circles while you have your pinky firmly planted as a kickstand. Letters are a fun thing to practice to draw because they're different shapes. That W, for example, will come in very handy as a cute little animal mouth. Here's another technique that I think we should all practice. If you have downtime, your hands are free, this is a good thing to do. It'll help build that muscle memory and, again, that confidence and that steadiness that's really the hallmark of someone who knows what they're doing. One thing that I find is very indicative of a well-thought-out professional artistic rendering is varied line width. What does that mean? Okay, well, this is a very thin line, and this is a very thick line. I drew both lines with the same marker, right? So choosing intentionally where and when your line is thick is a good way to show that you are making choices as a professional who knows what's coming up. So, for example, if I were to when I draw the outline contour of the top of my eye, I like to start very narrow. So I start with the tip of my marker on the balloon, curving up. But then as I get to the top of the marker, I want my line to be thicker. So I rotate the tip of my marker so that I'm drawing more with the edge than with the tip. It's also a pressure thing. The harder you press into the balloon with the tip, the more you're going to get that thick line. And then, of course, you can trail off by pressing less hard on the balloon as you remove the marker. That will give you a nice tapered flick there. This is not how to draw anything in particular. It's more about line technique and how to think about your lines as you're applying them on the balloon. If this feels like way too much specific detail, don't worry. Let these words kind of be a soup that you marinate in, and maybe you'll use them, maybe you won't. One last word of comfort. I know we talked about how to erase the Sharpie from the balloon if you've put down a mark that you don't like, but let's say you've gone too far. The Sharpie has dried, the Sharpie is very dark. You started to draw a face, you really liked it, you got a nice eye, you got a nice smile, you got a nice eye, but then, some kid was talking to you while you were drawing the eyelashes and you drew one really big, or someone bumped into you. Oh no, someone bumped into you while you were drawing, and oh gosh, what is happening? You spent all this time on this beautiful balloon and now it's not beautiful anymore. Well, here is a last resort. You can always rotate the face balloon. Now, it is a little tricky. There is a chance it could pop in this stage. But just know that you are the boss of the balloon. You're going in here and you're just slowly rotating the bubble. I know, can you feel the tension? Will it pop? But if you really just want a do-over and start with a blank canvas, you can. It's never too late. You're never too far gone where you can't just start over again. So don't be shy about jumping in and trying. Try. Let's make mistakes. Let's learn, yeah? Okay, we got this. So, faces. That's mostly what we're drawing when we're drawing on balloons, right? Because we've got all of the other details made out of balloons. But the face is the area of the character that the child or whoever you're making the balloon for is going to form that empathetic connection with. It is the essence of the character. There are, sometimes all you have to do is put a face on a round balloon, and without any other details, we know exactly which character we're looking at, right? Mr. Sharp. He brought me a lemon bar. Made in our edge pan. Thanks, babe. Human faces, not cartoon characters, just actual human beings. This is the way that the human face is distributed, anatomy-wise. So I've drawn a bisecting line down the middle of the face from side to side and the middle of the face from top to bottom. Eyes of the face are directly in the center of the head. It always feels like they're up a little higher than the center, right? But that's because we're kind of ignoring the fact that part of our head is covered in hair. So we're kind of saying, it's the top half of this, but it's the full half of this, okay? So that center line is where, in real life, we have our eyes. We like to give them a space about as wide as the eye itself in the center. Then halfway between the eyes and the bottom of the chin is where the base of our nose sits. And then halfway between the base of our nose and our chin is where our mouth sits. This is all very, very basic feature placement, and obviously every face is different. This is like our general human face proportion layout. But this is not cartoon adorable facial feature layout. So, babies and infants have really big craniums, and all of their facial features are smooshed down in the lower half of their face. This, we mammals find adorable. We can't get enough of that. So, instead of drawing the eyes on our center line, I like to start my eyes on that where I normally would put the nose beforehand. All of the spaces between our features, the space from the bottom of our eyes to the bottom of our nose, the space from our nose to our mouth, all of that we're gonna shrink. We want the nose to be very close to the bottom of the eyes. We want the mouth to be very close to the bottom of the nose. Remember, look at Pikachu, right? The nose is practically, it's not even below the eyes. It's like up in the middle of the eyes. And the mouth, there's barely any space at all between the bottom of the nose and the top of the mouth. That small shrunk down space, it's like shorthand for cute. So we're going to do our nose very close to the eyes, the bottom of the eyes, and then our mouth very close to the bottom of our nose. So this is the difference between adult human facial feature distribution and a kid or a cute cartoon character look. Look, I'm not going to tell you there's one right way and one wrong way. Every character is drawn differently, but for general rule, if we're just looking for like generically adorable, big eyes, small nose and mouth, and everything shrunk together and lower on the face. Looks like one of those things. This looks like one of those tic-tac-toe games at the park, you know, for kids. Okay, I'm gonna make something that's a little disturbing. A bunch of emotionless, disembodied lemon heads staring at you. Do you notice that I'm using that kickstand every time I do this? Every time. Before we get into drawing simple princess faces, I'd like to talk a bit about facial expressions. We all know the basic angry eyebrows point down in the middle, sad eyebrows point up in the middle, but there are a few different combinations. All of these faces on the top row have curved upwards mouths. This middle row, they all have neutral mouths, just straight across, kind of friendly. And then these down here will have our downturned mouths. And you could look at this and say, happy, 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 neutral, 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 maybe bored, and sad, sad, sad. But now I'm gonna try something where we do these vertical columns will have different eyebrows. Eyebrows are the most underrated facial hair because they convey so much information about the emotional state of the person. So we'll do these ones will first be the angry eyebrows, downward pointed. Then we'll do neutral eyebrows, just a gentle curve. And then we'll do our downward slanted eyebrows, our quote unquote sad eyebrows. But look at this. This isn't all happy, sad, or angry. We've got some really interesting combinations here. For example, if we're just looking at our angry eyebrows faces, well, this right here is pretty clearly angry, but this one right here, this one just looks like determined, like a look you might see on Ash Ketchum's face, or Spider-Man if he wasn't wearing the mask. Okay, you probably wouldn't see this on Spider-Man's face, but you get the idea. A look of determination. This is a look, maybe a bit of a mischievous look, right? Something you might see on the face of Zoe from Huntrix as she's about to wail on some demon. With neutral eyebrows, this happiness, even this neutral face with a neutral eyebrow, looks pleasant. It looks a little more alert than without the eyebrows. And then, of course, the sad face. This is a little sad, not so intensely sad, right? When we compare these two, this one is like, ooh, whoops, and this one is like, oh no. Now, sad eyebrows on a neutral mouth, it's almost like a disappointed or like a resigned kind of look. I do not get children asking me for disappointed princesses that often, but again, it's in the grid. It's something for you to think about. Don't draw your princesses with their eyebrows looking too sad, or they'll look like they're apologizing. For what? For being a lady, you're welcome. And then, of course, we've got sad eyebrows with a smile. Sad eyebrows with a smile, it's almost a little bit hopeful. It's almost a little bit encouraging. Or maybe embarrassed a little bit, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. I would absolutely put this face on a Zoe and a Rumi, but I would put this face on Amira because she's a little tougher, right? Or maybe this face on her. You know, like, you pick and choose with your characters what emotional tale you want to tell. The simplest face you could draw would be just a black marker. If you're cranking through a line and you've got to move fast, absolutely just use a black marker. If you have time, a little extra time, I'm going to show you a simple princess face that uses 3 markers. A black marker, a pale pink, and a dark pink or a red. This is going to be for the lip color, so, you know, dealer's choice. So the first marker I'm going to start with is my pale pink Sharpie. I'm going to always start with my lighter color first and then work darker. If I draw a darker colored Sharpie on top of a lighter colored, it'll just make a mark on top. If I draw a lighter colored on top of a darker colored Sharpie, it will streak. A little bit of that darker pigment will get in the pen nib of my lighter colored Sharpie, kind of damaging the ink going forward. So always work from lightest to darkest. So what I like to do is put landmarks on the face. And here's what I mean. I like to draw a dot for the nose. And again, that's going to be on the lower half of the face because we're going super cute. So I do a little oval. It's almost like a lentil there in the middle of the face. Now, I used a very pale pink on a blush colored balloon. You can barely see that, but that's kind of the point, okay? I like that because if I put that in the wrong place, well, no harm, no foul. I can easily draw on it again, wipe it off. What nose? No big deal. Or I can leave that on as a very subtle marker as far as where's the middle of my face and where should all my other features be in relation to that nose. So once I've got the nose, I'm going to do 2 cheeks, which are just larger ovals on either side of the nose. I am not being overly precise. This is a step that is meant to take seconds. Because again, it's so light in color that even if these are asymmetrical, if one of the cheeks looks a little bigger, if there's a bit of a scribble there and the pigment isn't perfectly even, once I've drawn darker shades on top, it won't be visible anymore. So it's not something that's going to be as noticeable. Now I'll grab my darker pink and right underneath that nose, right under the center, I'm going to draw a circle. It's not as wide as that nose was wide. Does that make sense? The nose was a horizontal oval, and this mouth right here is starting out just as a circle. But then from the center of the circle, I'm gonna go and do 2 quick flicks like this. Flick. There we go. That just gives you a little more definition of a lip than just a lion smile. But also you don't need to worry about drawing like the perfect Cupid's bow. I see a lot of people trying to draw like the lip where they do the, 2 lumps on the top and the 1 lump underneath. And it just comes out looking overdone, like very, very heavy-handed makeup. And I feel like these princesses, they're just like a little more demure, A little more mindful. Now I'm going to take my black marker. I'm going to draw a simple princess eye. So, look at this. I drew on there. Gasp! I wasn't paying attention and I dabbed a little dot of ink onto my balloon. Now, that happens to be in a place where I can draw my eye over it and it would be fine. But just in case, I'm going to take my light pink again, scribble over that, rub at it with my finger, do it 2 times. There we go. What dot? What marker? Mistakes? Learning experiences. Okay, now I'm going to try to start on my non-dominant side, a U shape. So we're curving down because, again, we're going demure. This is my demure eye. So it's a U-shape curve that starts pretty much a little bit above that nose. And now because I've got my non-dominant side is exposed, and I can do a little curve of some neutral eyebrows there. Perfect. I took a little bit longer on this one because we're going step by step, but you can very easily do a very simple princess face with just 3 colors of marker. There's a very quick variation we can do to give your princess a bit more of a cheerful, Genki personality. We're still starting with the horizontal bubble for the nose and the large, I say bubble, horizontal oval for the nose and larger ovals for our cheeks. And again, our round with our 2 flicks for our mouth there. And then because this is an energetic princess, instead of a U, we're going to do a lowercase n where we curve up. And do you notice how I tried to push harder on that outside of the curve? So I get a thicker line on the outside and thinner on the inside. Now from the edge of that, I'm just gonna go flick, flick, flick. 3 little lines, beautiful. I'll do the same thing on the other side now that I have my non-dominant visible. Flick, flick, flick. There we go. And of course, eyebrows. So cute, so simple, pretty fast. So whether she's curious and energetic or demure and ladylike, these are 2 very simple princess faces that you can add to a small canvas. You don't have a lot of room to work. This is the way to go. Okay, we already showed you how to draw the simple princess face using just the pale pink, the dark pink, and the black. Now we're going to show an advanced princess face, okay? This will also use white paint marker and an ink marker for the iris color of the eye. If you'd like a tutorial on how I make the faces, the bases, and also full princess dresses, I have another tutorial on all of the Disney princesses, and we go over that there. We're finally drawing on my horizontal 360 bubble faces. This is obviously my personal preference, but these tips should work on any construction. I start the same way I started with the simple face, which is that little nose and cheeks in that lighter color pink that's barely even noticeable. That's step 1. Step 2, we're going for our iris color. I'm gonna locate this vertical oval to the side and just above our nose. So there, see, I went with the non-dominant side here. So it's a bit to the side of the nose and a little bit higher, like the top of that cheek, the top of the nose. That's about the bottom of my eye. So I'll come over here and do the same thing. Gorgeous. These are not identical. They're not perfect, and they never are. I go fast at this stage because really what's going to bring it all together in the end is that black outline. Don't waste your time getting this stage perfect because the outline is going to cover everything up anyway. Next, we're going to do our white. So we'll take our white paint marker and we are going to trace around these ovals. Not entirely. I'm going to start from the center here, and I'm going to draw over to the center there, just that top hemisphere of that iris. But I'm going to do that line width thing where I start tracing a very narrow line, and I press a little bit harder by the time I'm on the outside edge of the eye, so it's a thicker white on the outside than it is on the inside. Now I'll replicate that on the other eye. It may be helpful for you at the beginning to draw these 2 anchor points so you know where you're starting from and where you're drawing to. I don't have to do that anymore, but if you need to do that, go for it, my friend. And then while we still have our white marker out, I like to do a hyphen here, little just right there. And then I'll do my catch lights in the eye, which is a little dot in one corner, diagonal up right or up left corner of the iris. Remember, the iris is the colored part of the eye. So if I'm picking the upper right corner, then it has to be the upper right on this eye as well as this eye. Because what this is representing is the reflection of the light source in the room on the wet part of your eye, right? So because your eyes are juicy, they reflect where the light is. The light isn't in a different place for both different eyes, though. So you always want that to be on the same side of the eye. We'll take our dark pink. The nice thing about her having pink hair is I can use the dark pink for both the lips and the eyebrows. I do like to pick my eyebrow color so it kind of complements the hair. For our lips, I'm just going to trace a very thin line across the top of my hyphen that I made. And then I'm going to trace a curve underneath the hyphen. Now, the hyphen was pretty much a rectangle. But because of the way I've traced around it, it doesn't look that rectangular anymore. It looks more like a naturally curved smile shape. And now we're at the last part of the balloon, which is the black. Definitely the step that ties it all together. Draw the pupils in the eyes. I could draw the pupils whole and then add the catchlight at the end. I prefer to get all of my white drawn in one go while I have the white marker open, but it's your call. Basically, the trade-off is you have to be careful when you're drawing the pupil so that you trace around the catchlight instead of making a plain oval. Now, for tracing the eyelashes, same thing. We're going to trace around the edge of our white, going thicker on the outside edge. Same thing here. Now, smizing is very important, right? When we smile, our cheeks squinch our eyes up from the bottom. It's a little tricky to tell on her, so what we'll do is we'll take our black marker and just do 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. These little, that's basically the lower eyelashes. Rather than trace all the way around the eye, which would give her kind of like an emo look, right? A little too intense of an eye. Those little dots give me a framing underneath the eye and also allow me to show that there is a bit of a squinching underneath the eyes. That smile is truly genuine. All right, that was princess style number 1. This is our energetic princess. I would say your Annas, your Rapunzels, your curious princesses, your Ariels. This is a look of bright-eyed wonder, yeah? But we do have a calmer, more demure eye that we can do. I'll be drawing that on this blue-haired base, so I'm going to use light pink, dark pink, black, but I'm also going to use blue for our eyebrow, brown for our irises, and white for the white parts of the face. So that makes 6 markers in this design. You see how every little detail can add a step. All right, everybody, demure princess time. So we're going to do our nose bubble and our cheek bubbles. Very lovely. I wanted to give her brown eyes, so I'll be doing our ovals here. Now, last time when I drew the ovals, they were above the cheeks. But this time they're overlapping the cheeks. It doesn't matter. I'm truly, wherever the cheeks line up, it's mostly just so I can make sure that when I'm tilting the head this way and tilted this way, it lets me know that I'm not drawing one eye way out on the side and one eye more centered. It's just a placement device for me. White marker, here we go, for our more demure princess. We'll do basically the same thing, but upside down or opposite. So we're going to do from the inside half to the outside a little bit higher than half. I like to go all the way up to like maybe 3/4 around. So we'll trace around. And again, pushing harder when we're on the outside edge of the eye. Beautiful. And I'll also throw in my catch lights. Nice. And again, our little white hyphen. So simple. I don't want to make my hyphen so close to the nose that there's no room for the lip. Dark pink, I'll just go over the top of the lip there and under the bottom. Beautiful. We need blue eyebrows. See, that's that varied line width. We push hard on the inside, trail off by the edge, because eyebrows traditionally are thicker at the center of your face than they are out by the edge. Last step, we'll take our black. And again, I'm just coloring the section of pupil that's visible. And then we'll trace over this half of the eye. Basically, we're going to trace as though the brown and the white were one shape. So I'm tracing over the two of them. Does that make sense? I'm not following the brown down. I'm going over the brown and then continuing around the white as well. So I'll do the same thing on this side over here. Touch off here, touch around. Again, we're tracing the brown until we get down to the edge, and then we're just continuing around that white as well. And flick, flick, flick for our eyelashes. And also we'll do our 1, 2, 3 underneath there. But there you go, look at that! So beautiful. So, you know, it's like Elsa and Anna or Elphaba and Glinda, right? Like, this is a tale as old as time. But either face is adorable, and I think is pretty similarly broken down step by step. So it shouldn't be too tricky for you to remember how to put these together. I have faith in you. You got this. I've been teaching this a long time, and I've seen a lot of people at the beginning. There are a few pitfalls that everybody struggles with, so I'm just going to give you a heads up. In case you notice these things in your artwork, here's some tips. So one thing I see a lot is people will draw the face. They'll be so careful to get it exactly right, and they'll be so happy that they got it right, and it's so tiny on the face, and it is really good, but they're not taking advantage of the full canvas of the face. So obviously you don't want to ever draw your princess so that her eyes are so big that you have to rotate the head to see them. You do want to make sure that we are in, you know, the center plane of the face, but we want to fill that canvas. We have a lot of space, so go for it. Another problem I see a lot of people who are starting out with this design will do their eyes like this. They'll have that nice curve up, and then for eyelashes, they'll curve like this. That's not so bad, but I think people think, well, eyelashes are curved. When I see an eyelash, it's curved. Therefore, when it comes off the end of an eye, we've got to curve it up like that. But eyelashes are curved, but they're curved towards the viewer. So we're not seeing that flat curve. What we see is more the contour of the eye and then the eyelash coming straight at us, which is why it's more accurate to depict those two-dimensionally by little flicks going straight off of the eye as opposed to these big looping curls that I see a lot of people do sometimes. It makes the eye look a little too heavy, a little too droopy. One other thing that I see a lot of people do is hairy line work. What does that mean? Okay, I'll sometimes ask you to trace around a shape that you've drawn. I have drawn a green oval and I want to trace it. I like tracing in just one solid line, but I'll see people trace like this. Well, they'll be like, okay, I'll do this, and then this, and then that And so what they end up with is what I call hairy lines, right? Because instead of confidently, and I know, oh, the simple answer is just be confident. Okay, Shana. But fake it till you make it, right? Swoop with one long line. Try and do as much of your outline in one movement as possible. You can always trace over a hairy line. If a hairy line is what you need to be confident that you know the shape you're going to draw, and then you go over that with your nice, confident, thick line, that's perfect. You know, because you can't sketch in pencil on balloons. That's one big difference between paper and rubber, is no pencil sketch available. That is why, though, I really like drawing those landmarks in the light ink, because that's as close to pencil guidelines as you can get on a balloon. I just wanted to show you one other thing here. Sometimes it's the end of the party, we've got to pack up, and a little kid comes up and asks us for the princesses that they just saw that we made, but you don't have 5 minutes. This is what I do. You know, if I have to go fast, we'll even time it because I'm curious. I've never timed it before. Here we go. Right? All right, coming in on a minute and a half, which is a decent amount of time to spend on a balloon, I think. This is my emoji ballerina. If you just twist the legs around each other at the center, that gives it a nice little ballerina pose. And because there's an established rule that emoji have just like yellow head with no hair, it's not awkward. It's not like, oh, cool, a bald ballerina. What an interesting choice. We don't have to worry about that. Simple face on the simple ballerina. We only need 2 colors, pink and black. Pink will be our cheeks, and then black will be our eyelashes. And then my smile, I like to go very vertical sort of smile like that. And I think eyelashes are nice here. Perfect. So simple. So fast. Still beautiful, still princessy, still has the cute face, which is probably what they saw on the princess that they liked about it in the first place. And there you go. Next time, get in line earlier, kid.
All right, you did it. That's the end of the notes. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at Shana, SHANA, @sharpballoons.com. Feel free to check out all of our other YouTube videos. And until I see you next time, keep making art and keep being human.